Wow, man. It's a tough crowd.
Let's beat him to it.
Yes, sir.
I got 3 out of 4.
I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody. Let's see, need to get back. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called work session board meeting. The board welcomes and values input from the community. A single open forum will be provided during tonight's meeting to allow the public the opportunity to address the board. During this time, individuals may share comments or requests related to both agenda items and non-agenda items. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify their name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is set. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Dr. Harrington, any comments?
Just a couple of comments and updates. I wanted to, I received some information on enrollment I thought I would share with the board. So at this time, we've got 22,883 at this time. Last year, we were at 22,791, almost 100 students up. Again, the demographer, which is very accurate and highly respected, has said the last couple of years we should be going down, and we are bucking the trend and continue to increase students. So that's an exciting trend for us. The other thing, just a convocation. I have a couple shout outs. I did want to thank our PR team and marketing team, Deanne's crew, Kendall Freeze, Christine Cumberledge, Cross Cities Church, all the VPA, Sonia's group getting the colors ready to be presented. So just a really exciting. And since Sonia's here, I heard this on Sunday, and I thought I would throw this out. So Sonia has been bringing the students from DAEP to Ash Lane Church for community service opportunities, and by attending community service, they can actually get time off of their time at DAEP. We had students who continued to come and serve over the summer.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
I'm like, that's creating the change
Yeah.
that you want to see. And so, thank you, Sonia.
All right, any clarifications?
None at this time.
All right, we're ready for open forum 1. No cards. Need closed session?
We will.
Okay. So at this time, pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076. At this time, the board will reconvene into open session. We're ready for reports and presentations. 6.01, disbursements for the month of July 2025. Were there any questions on disbursements? 6.02, strategic plan scorecard update, employee success. Ms. Tuttle?
All right, I am going to give you a brief update on employee success tonight. And this has to do with our quarterly average fill rate, which our goal is 95%. And as you'll recall, we were at or above 97% for each of the 4 quarters last school year. These are the relevant quality indicator key actions that we believe impact the fill rates. So we, as executive leadership team members, monitor fill rates. We look at the vacancy report. We pay attention to those trends, and we work with the campuses and departments to do the same. We also, in the Human Resources Department, work on workforce branding, which allows our employees to partner with us and share the story of why HEB is the place to be. And then we also utilize some, I call them pop-up recruitment events. Last year we did 2 of those, so mini job fairs. One of those was for special education, and then one was in June. Some of our principals suggested that we do a small version of the job fair in June, and so we did have 2 hours for teachers and an hour for paraprofessionals, and that was very successful. And then that we will, as an executive leadership team, always pay attention to the comparable districts around us. What are they doing for retention? What types of benefits are they offering? And then finally, that we would formalize the district's Grow Your Own program, which you're aware we did last year. So here for our first quarter, we're at 97%. So we are meeting and exceeding our target. And we are very happy about this data. And then this breaks that down by the different groups that we use from our staffing table. So it gives you those percentages for each of the 5 groups that we're measuring. Are there any questions?
All right, no questions?
Last year's?
So there was a question about where we are now as compared to where we were last year. So in the Friday update, I shared with you, for example, that we had 6 teacher vacancies right now. That moved to 7 today because we did receive a resignation from a teacher whose husband has been transferred out of state. And of course, we are working with that individual. So we are today, right now, we have 7 teacher vacancies, 1 elementary, 6 secondary. I was looking at this exact data from last year on this date, and we actually had 4 teacher vacancies, 0 of those were in elementary and 4 were in secondary. So we're a little bit up from where we were last year, but it's not something that I would consider a significant concern. Any other questions?
All right, 6.03, report on Texas House Bill 3372.
All right, well, I'm going to share with you tonight information on Texas House Bill 3372. I'm going to give you an overview of the statute, some of the implications for us, and then what next steps we are going to put in place to make this as seamless as we can. I'll start with our strategic plan alignment. This aligns to district priorities for employee success and for effectiveness and efficiency. For employee success, because we want to make sure our employees are safe and that they're doing things by the law and that they are able to focus on their work and not worry about the riffraff, so to speak. And then effectiveness and efficiency, because we believe that when new statute comes into play, it can be confusing, it can be overwhelming. So our role in HR has been to come up with a process that will be as easy for our employees and the trustees as we can make it. So I'll begin with a little bit about this bill. The law went into effect on June 22nd, and it was under the umbrella of preventing conflicts of interest and prohibiting some compensated personal services by school district administrators. I want to point out here that as with any new law, we only have the bill. That is what we have when we're working with our attorney, Lynn Rossi Scott, on this process. We only have a very few paragraphs in a bill. That means that what we can expect is as questions and scenarios come up, there will be AG opinions and there will be case law. And that's the thing, those are the areas where we'll begin to get some clarification, and we might even be able to have a little bit more wiggle room. But for our purposes and for the protection of our employees, we're going to interpret this as closely as we can to what we believe the law is saying. So those impacted are those who have significant administrative responsibilities, and that can be with a campus, a department, or any other subdivision of the district. For our purposes, this includes assistant principals, coordinators, directors, executive directors, and then all of those with superintendent in their title. It excludes classroom teachers and those who primarily focus on direct instruction. It also excludes you as board members. But what is prohibited? So there are 3 things that are prohibited. School administrators may not receive a financial benefit for providing personal services to business entities that either already do business with the district or could do business with the district. So in this particular area, the law does not offer any exceptions. The second bullet is talking about educational vendors. This would be curriculum services, technology vendors, other services that would be provided. And this is not just those vendors that would provide services to our district. This is vendors that would provide services to any district. There are exceptions that apply under this bullet. The third is other public education entities. So that can be school districts, universities, educational service centers, charters. Exceptions do apply under that bullet as well. So here's the slide that's going to lay out what those exceptions are. I'm going to start by saying there are no exceptions for administrators who have superintendent in their title. So for our purposes in HEBISD, that means that the superintendent, the deputy superintendents, the associate superintendents, or the assistant superintendents are not able to move forward under this exception. All other administrators do have the opportunity. And the way that this works is a contract, the bill is very clear that a contract or a memorandum of understanding, or sometimes it's an email agreement, must be submitted to the Board of Trustees for review and consideration for approval. And in considering that approval, the 3 prongs that you as the board are looking at are, does this cause harm to the district? Is there a conflict of interest? And will the services occur on the employee's personal time? Assuming those 3 things are found to be true, the board can approve the contract. And that then does allow administrators who do not have superintendent in their title to be able to provide those services for a financial benefit. I also want to point out here that all contracts are subject to public disclosure, and that could happen through a public information request through Public Information Act. And then there is a $10,000 civil penalty for each violation. While there aren't any criminal charges listed in this law, it is always important to point out that there are other criminal laws that address bribery, coercion of a public servant, and prohibited gifts to a public servant. So we have to be mindful of those things, but for the purposes of this bill and this law, there is a $10,000 civil penalty, which is the reason that we're going to take a very conservative interpretation until we're given a reason to move some away from that. So what does financial benefit mean? So it is not spelled out in the law, in the bill. And so when this happens, our attorneys with Brackett and Ellis, they then are charged with looking at that type of a definition in other relevant laws. And so in doing so, we believe that this includes payments, honorariums, stipends, gift cards, any financial incentive. We do not believe it includes reimbursement for employees' reasonable expenses. So let's say that an employee or an administrator is traveling to a meeting on a committee that they serve on, and they are given, by that committee, they are given mileage reimbursement. That is not going to meet the financial benefit definition under this law. And then the same is true for personal time. The law does not clearly spell that out, and so in looking at context clues from other laws, we believe that this is going to refer to time outside an employee's contract days and work hours, Or if it is occurring during contract days or work hours, then it's going to require the employee to use a leave day from their leave bank. So for example, a personal day or a vacation leave day. And then what are the implications for us? Well, first is the establishment of a submission process. The second is going to be making sure we're communicating to our administrators the law, but also what our process is so that they can stay in compliance with that. And then developing a sound record retention system so that when and if there are open records requests that come in, we can easily provide that information. And then we also are committed to incorporating this House bill and this law into our annual administrator training, beginning in nuts and bolts for 2026. So I want to move forward and talk about next steps and how we plan to ensure compliance with this new statute. The Human Resources Department will take ownership for the communication and guidance that's provided. We will make sure that the employees are aware of statute requirements of the actual submission process. And then as we receive updates from agencies or from court interpretations, we will share those not only with you, but also with our administrators. The second thing that we believe is important is providing resources for administrators. And so I want to just pull up for you. This is a communique that we will be ready to send tomorrow morning to all of our administrators, and it outlines the bill in green, but it also tells them what our process is going to be for following the law, and it gives them the contact information, the form to complete, and it lets them know that they can reach out to Mr. Martinez or to me with any specific questions. We also have developed an FAQ based on some of the questions we've already begun to receive from employees. And this FAQ will be ongoing. We'll continue to add to it, but it should be a great resource to our administrators. And then finally, our contract MOU agreement submission form, which is it is a Google form, but we have already placed this within the ClassLink launchpad of every administrator in the district. So while they don't know it's there, once they receive the communication tomorrow, they would be able to go into their ClassLink launchpad and access this form and complete it. Did I go too far? Okay. And then the next step is going to be the process implementation. And so I've mentioned that it is accessible. We are going to utilize a standing board meeting agenda action item, which of course we will only use if we need it, but that's the way that we will share with you the information. And just as I did Friday, I'll give you some background information in the Friday update to hopefully make this simpler, more simple than it might at first glance appear. I've also provided at your stations tonight the one-page document that Lynn Rossi Scott and I developed as a guide for you when you are looking at those contracts. And then we will be responsible, Hector and I, for answering any communication questions with you. You might have a question about one of these contracts after a Friday update, and we will be happy to work with you on that. And then we will also be responsible the morning after a board meeting for sending the approval. We have an approval workflow set up in that form, and we'll be able to communicate with the administrators what the decision was, if the contract was approved or denied. We will also be the ones who are responsible for retaining the documents and making sure that we're working with the PR department if any of those are requested. And then another important step is going to be process feedback. This is a new law. We are doing the best we can to interpret it in the way that protects our employees the most. And we know that there will be important feedback you will be able to offer us as trustees as we go through this, and we will be seeking that from you, from the administrators who utilize the form and the process, and then from any legal resources that become available, because there are not any right now. So that takes you through the overview, the implications, and our next steps. I want to know if you have any questions or any clarification that I can try to provide for you.
Any questions from the board?
So Cicely, I have one question. The way you guys or the way we understand this law is it's for an individual. It's not like other things where I'm a third grade teacher, but I'm married to someone who happens to work for a textbook company. Because that's not a financial benefit to me, is it?
That's correct. You are
Okay.
correct. This is about the administrator, him or herself, providing specific individual services to one of those three entities.
How are we looking at like travel expenses? Like, say you get asked to come and talk to a vendor, a textbook vendor, and they want to talk to our curriculum department for suggestions or to go over some information, and they buy you lunch or a dinner or put you up in a hotel.
So that's actually covered in a different policy. Has no bearing on our vendor policy. And in our FAQ, I'm trying to put my finger on it right now. In our FAQ, we reference our board policy DBD local, which you'll recall about 2 years ago, we did some pretty heavy work on that for the very same reason. We wanted to provide clear parameters because there was a little bit of some gray areas in some people's minds. And so our board policy DBD very clearly spells out what can and can't be accepted. And I can get back with you on that specific answer, but since I've been so focused on this one, I have not pulled that up in reviewing for
Like
tonight.
there could be some overlap though, so.
Yeah. And then could you, Dobie, if you're good, can we share the example of the board you sit on? I think that-
Okay, so Dobie sits on a board that meets quarterly in another city. And they do not pay him to sit on the board, but he does attend those board meetings. And when he does, he is put up in a hotel and he does get mileage reimbursement. That is not at all what this law is referring to. And so you saw that bullet that said what we believe it includes and what we believe it excludes. Those are reimbursements, and we were able to find, not we, Lynn Rossi Scott was able to cite from several other laws that reimbursement is separate from a financial benefit. So that would not be an issue. Any other questions?
So the actual filling out of the forms, are they allowed to do that when they're on?
That is fine. That is fine. That's a great question. We do not mind them completing the form while they are here because this is something they're having to do as a result of being an administrator in our district.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is finding all the things that it's going to cost us, and that's part of it. Is
Correct.
losing some time filling out these forms. And, and the requirement that the board then has to take its time to read over all of them and
That's right.
decide based off those three criteria whether or not that goes against everything they teach you when they're trying to teach you how to govern a school district. Lone Star governance is all about focusing on student success, not on worrying about whether teachers are earning an extra couple $100 in a other district,
Yes.
doing a PD for them or something.
And we do recognize the burden that this places on the employee, the stress that it creates with employees who have been able to do small things like this, and the burden that it places on the trustees. And so it's our desire that, as we get additional guidance, which we will, there will be some case law and there will be some AG opinions, that we can update our process. But I completely hear you and agree with you that this is an example of something that is having an impact, an unintended consequence, if you will, on lots of people.
Yeah. Do we have any idea yet how many of these we're going to generate over the course of a year?
I
Seems
have
like it
no
could be
way to
hundreds,
predict.
but-
I have no way to predict. I know that you had 2 that will appear later on the agenda this week, and then I know I've already received 1 that came in after the board meeting. So I would assume that what I expect is that there are going to be some things that may come to you annually. There may be some agreements that, like one of the ones you're reviewing for tonight, there's one that will be ongoing throughout the year, and then I would expect that would come back to you next year as an additional school year review. But I think this will be the year for us to have that trend data, and I have no idea what to expect.
Question? Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Cicely. Let's see, 6.04, bond update follow-up.
Okay, I want to discuss, last week, as you're well aware, there was some information presented to you in the bond update. This slide in particular had some some very incorrect numbers. And first of all, I want to apologize for that. That should have never got past us. We got it so late, nobody had a chance to look at it, and it slipped through. My apologies. What we have done is we have sat down with HPM, Stephen Jones and myself. We have worked through all these numbers, tied them to one project or the other. We have put some parameters in place, some, what do we call it? A process. We've put a process in place. How do you forget a word like process in HEB? We've put some processes in place to where this is going to come through Stephen Jones and myself to make sure that these numbers are matching up and reconciling on our end of things. And so what I did, we put this in HPM updated the presentation that was presented to the board last week. That original presentation, along with this updated presentation, was given to the board in the Friday update. What we did was just pull out a couple of slides out of that updated presentation to go over tonight, because that's really where the majority of the issues lie, are laid. So you're seeing at the top up there, that was what was presented last Monday, the smaller square of data information up there, along with some information as to what had questions, what was wrong, where did those numbers come from. Some of it was just, HPM's pulling data by expenditure codes. There was some coding errors. There was some pulling some from different codes once we dug into it. Because you got to remember, these two projects, even though they're bond related, they're very critical to our entire bond, because of it's providing our students and staff facilities that we can move people to back and forth. They weren't part of the original bond project, but we want to pay for these projects out of bond funds, anticipating that we will have enough interest income and contingency funds left over at the end of the day when it's all said and done, so that these could be paid out of bond funds, because we can't go back after the fact and pay these out of bond funds. So as you remember, we did a reimbursement resolution. We reimbursed the district for pre-bond. Both these properties were purchased pre-bond. We reimbursed for that, and some of the expenditures that were done up to that point. That reimbursement resolution, I think, totaled around $16 million. So we put that back into our locally defined, with the understanding that at the end of the day, if we happen to need to use those funds, we can still use those at the end of the day if we need to finish up on this bond project. So just kind of go down through. Like I say, these are not like your other projects where you have a GMP or an approved budget. There was not necessarily a budget. HPM is just tracking these expenditures for us so that we can see where we're at and make sure we don't spend more than what we need to spend on these properties. So with that, we've got, as I stated in the Friday update last Friday, your current contract amount, that third column, that is what I will call the budget per se. Those are the expenditures. MART 2.1, SDB, which was contracted to come in and do the electrical. You remember the electrical? That's the thing. This project's had so many different things happen. There's just a lot of moving parts. SDB came in to repair and replace all the copper theft that happened on that building. The Aqua Rec they came in for the pool that came out. We contracted with them directly. We have figured out that some of those what they're calling change orders or added services. There was a pool pump that went out after Aqua Rec did their contracted service. That's part of what that cost is, because we had to get that, and there's an ongoing cost of. So we got to maintain that pool, and so, but those things don't need to be coming out of the bond. So we're going to correct those and move those out of the bond and just start paying those out of our general maintenance fund moving forward. Or well, we may go back and even actually fix those and just pull them out of this expense. Anyway, those things. architect fees, CMJ Engineering, City of Euless permit fees, that raised a red flag, because why do we have City of Euless permits on a Bedford property? That's a coding error. As I said, HPM is picking these things up with, by codes, by expenditure codes. That got coded to this project. It actually, that will get moved. We're going to move that to the Masonic Lodge property. That's really what that permit was for. And that lodge, like these two properties, or that property like these two properties, that is part of the bond, but, you know, they're kind of, we have included that in Trinity's scope of work because it's attached to Trinity and we're doing all that. So that'll get moved over there.
Well, on the permit, we have, under the contract, we have an allowance for permits. There shouldn't be a line item.
No.
Permits on this project, right?
No.
It should be under Mark.
Yes, and Mart did pay, yes, the permit fee is under Mart. Now, that City of Euless permit that says 225, whatever, the pre-development, that should be city, that's just got the wrong city on it. It should be City of Bedford, and that was a pre-permit application fee prior to that project, so. Let's see, what else? Are there any other questions you might have in relation to this particular slide? Because like I say, this is the one that was the bulk of the issues.
So are you saying that amount for the City of Euless permit is going to come off of here?
Yes, it's still coming out of bond funds. It's just coded to the wrong project. It needs to go over to Trinity. It'll go up under Trinity's project because it's part of that permit fee for tearing down that Masonic Lodge and doing that work on that property. So it is an expense we paid, we owed. It just doesn't need to be shown on this project, if that makes sense.
All right. Any other questions?
Toby, if we can get this then cleaned up, get City of Euless pre-development to City of Bedford, and
Yes.
then move the other off, and then also the Aqua Rec, get that cleaned up, move those other maintenance over into our maintenance department, and then we can get this pushed out.
We can push it out. We can get this exactly where it needs to be. One other thing I want to point out on here is in the original presentation where the other soft costs, that 5.6 million, they had put in there some fees that they thought they were outside the bond tied to these projects because they're just going by codes. They didn't have a description of what these actual expenses were, and they were for bond sales costs, which are like $3.8 million. I mean, it's a big number. So those have been moved back up into the master budget, which I also gave you in the Friday update. Those costs, you'll see a new line on that master budget that talks about other fees that are tied to projects, but it's for the sale of the bond. Those are all bond-related costs. They just weren't aware of where that needed to go, but we've got all that straightened out with them now, and I think we're in good shape with HPM on how we're going to move going forward. And then, unless you have some more questions on this, I'm going to move it over to the, it's another slide. It's not a, are we good with this one for it? The next one's the Hurst-Euless Center over on Highway 10. That one, there weren't a lot of changes to that other than just once we figured out on this property, we looked at that one and said, oh yeah, that's kind of the same thing. There's fees there that are charged there that need to go back up into the bond.
I was waiting on y'all,
Oh.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. The Hurst-Euless Center. Like I say, these didn't change substantially, but the numbers moved a little bit once we went through and reconciled against our actual numbers, so same type of things here. We just broke them down into as much detail as we could. Any questions on that? And then there was a couple slides which I didn't include tonight, but I know there were questions last Monday about the timeline and moving, how that was gonna play out, and they did add some new slides in there, and I didn't know if, Josh, did you want to speak to that timeline slides or anything like that? Because I don't have them up here to reference. It's the only thing, other than it speaks to where the project should be at this time, what percentage, and to where we actually are. Bell was at 7%, they should be at 4%, so they're ahead. Trinity was at 2%, and that's about where Trinity should be right now. So actually, 2% for Trinity is probably ahead of the game, because they really probably shouldn't even be that far at this point, but they're making good headway on those projects, in good shape.
All right.
If y'all got any questions of me or Josh or HPM?
Tell me what we get for $212,000 for city of Euless permit. Why is that so expensive? How many bricks do they lay?
How many what?
Bricks do they lay? I mean, I don't understand why
I
that's.
mean, they charge permits based off percentage of the total cost, right?
Yes, it's, different cities do it different, and Josh can probably speak to that a lot better than I can. City of Hurst does it a lot different than the city of Euless does it. Because the city of Euless will pick up all these different fees and lump them all together, whereas city of Hurst gets the same things through another avenue. I mean, at the end of the day, they kind of end up being close to each other, but
Yeah, I know,
is
like,
that- is that right?
Bell
Explain
was a little over 3 million for our permit, right? How
Yes.
much was the Euless permit? So, I mean, the Trinity permit.
You remember that?
Sorry.
The Euless Trinity project permit?
Or permit, yes, it was a little over $3 million.
So they were both pretty close.
And we had that, we negotiated that down a ways, because one thing Brian has done is they pulled in the average, let's say, the surrounding communities. We're looking at, and I'm working with the city manager, Chris Barker. He asked, because we pushed back and said that we had concerns about the cost of the permit. And he said he's open to and wants to see what we have, or what HPM sees in other communities. So I have a document that I'm going to be getting with Chris to go through that, because that's definitely one. It's hard to swallow that when we see the permit on an elementary would have paid for all of our FF&E. And so the one thing to kind of give you an idea of what that pays for the city of Euless, they got a bid from their third party, and the third party, it kicks out all the plans, and the third party does all the reviews. So for them, it's not just, I'm thinking as a taxpayer, I'm paying both the city and the school district. Why am I doing twice to pay for the same service? In this case, the city is actually going out to a third party, and it is a direct cost for them. And so that's part of what allowed us to bring that cost down, is that Chris looked at that and said, okay, we're going to inspect you internally, but we're going to use third party to do the review on the plans. And so that they did bring that price down a little bit.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of inspections and a lot of time spent walking these sites. We wanted to be safe, but still $3 million.
Right. Well, and think about the city of Hurst. The convention center is the closest thing to the size of what, and expenditure of what is entailing for the inspections for Bell High School. And so when you're doing residential and small commercial, and not at the scale that we are, it can slow us down. And so we really worked with the city of Hurst and then also the city of Euless to make sure that those inspections, which would be the fastest and most economical for both us and the cities, because we can also consume so much of their time that it could slow down their development in other areas, and we didn't want that either. So it was trying to strike the fine balance of, okay, can we lower our price or cost while keeping our jobs moving?
All right. Any other questions? I mean, I just want to mention that, it's a little disappointing that these numbers still aren't right, that, when we get to see them again after a week of, waiting to see the correct numbers, that there's still things that we're having to mentally juggle around and move. So I'm hoping that, whatever process you have in place gets us a lot tighter, so that we're not having to do that in the future.
So, and I know Dobie apologized. I do as well. It's my team. But at the same time, what I do appreciate is your continued trust and support. And the one thing is that as we're moving forward in true fashion of the way we should with continuous improvement, we're going to be continuing with our root cause analysis. And as building a facilities department. Like, we know that there's going to be stumbles along the way, but I'm always saying it's not about the mistake, it's going to be how we recover. So I want to bring back that, is to show you, that's part of my DIP right now, is to develop the processes, document those, and get those implemented. And so this is just one of those major steps. It's just not as much fun doing it in front of everybody.
All right. Anything else? Yeah. All right. So I guess that's it for that. Citizen forum public hearing presentation of the 2025-2026 budget. Mr. Jones.
Okay, we've got the 25-26 proposed budget. By law, we did publish this in the paper in the commercial recorder on 7/31. We met all the legal requirements of it. The funds that are required to be approved by the board is the general fund, the child nutrition fund, and the debt service fund, and those are all approved at the functional level. So our schedule is pretty similar to the schedule we've had in the past, where we start the process in January, go through some staffing reviews in February. Budgets are usually due from our departments and campuses early March. Then our ELT reviews it in April. We did our workshop with you guys in June. And then in July was the raise package for everyone. We received our certified tax roll on July 23rd. We published on July 31st. And then we're holding the hearing on August 11th. This is a much sooner time than normal. Usually we do this closer to the end of August. But due to the tax rate election and everything, that we do have to get this approved a little bit earlier this year. Okay, so we'll start with the general fund. General fund is our district operational budget. Funding comes from local property taxes and state funding. For the general fund revenue, it's determined by a state funding formula, with the primary factors being our attendance and our local property values. Some secondary sources that we receive funding from is our interest income, our athletics, some federal, and just a few little miscellaneous other things here and there. So we'll start with enrollment. Our projected enrollment is actually down 100 students from last year, so all of our figures are based off that. If we do come in better, it'll help our revenue out, so that will definitely help if we can have more students than last year. This is our property values. This one slide gets a little confusing because of all the new homestead bills that have passed over the last couple of sessions. You'll see the red column in 2023, where we had a comparison between the $40,000 homestead and the $100,000 homestead. And then in 2025, assuming it passes, which we have to figure everything as if it passes, $100,000 homestead versus the $140,000. So you're looking at property values were up a little bit for this year, but once you calculate in that extra $40,000 for the homestead, it's at $20.3 billion for our property values for the district. Okay, the M&O tax rate that we're recommending for last year was 0.6726. The maximum compressed tax rate that we're given from TEA for this year was exactly the same as last year at 0.6226. We're recommending the 8 golden pennies, the 5 that are approved by the board, plus the 3 that would require a Vader election, which would bring us to a 0.7026. And then for all the revenue funds and everything, it's going to show those numbers and our figures on here. And then this is kind of a history of our property tax rate, starting with 2017, back when we were having to maintain the $1.04, down to the newer compressed rates, which has brought us to this 0.7026. Okay, our local revenue number, based on all of our property values, will bring us in at $129 million. This is one of the few numbers that will change in our budget if the Vader doesn't pass. If it fails, you can reduce that number by $6 million on the local tax revenue, bring it down to 123. Obviously, this one's a decrease because of the homestead exemption increase. And our total local revenue would be about $131 million for this year, which is a slight decrease over last year. And the biggest part of that decrease is right now we have more interest budgeted. We only have $300,000 in interest budgeted. Obviously, we don't know what interest rates are going to look like through the next year, but hopefully we can definitely exceed that $300,000 again. State revenue, total of the available school fund and foundation school is at $97 million.
This is another one, if the Vader were to fail, it would cost us another $6 million there. TRS on behalf, due to the increased wages, will go up to 11.7. So the overall increase to the state budget with HB2 and then some of those other little things would actually increases $28 million over last year. Federal funds is about the same as we always budget, around $450,000. And then the other sources, you'll see that in that payroll set-aside fund, if the Vader passes, we need $8.6 million from that. If it doesn't pass, we still need $20.6 million from that. So that's one of the big changes to our budget. This is what the amended revenue budget looks like for our current year right now, with 56% coming from local and 35% coming from state.
You know, Stephen, that threw me off on that slide, the one that you just went past, because that 34.7 is exactly the same as the increase of the state funding. I was like,
yeah, it's one of those odd things with the numbers. With the 25-26 budget, with the extra funds we're picking up from HB2, you're looking at a 52% local and state 43.7. So here's kind of a history of how the state funding looks like over the years. It gets a little bit big, then we, with the local portion getting big, and then they compress us a little bit, and it's brought it back down with that. Okay, so our total revenue for the year for our budget, it's a $250 million budget. This is an increase of $17 million from last year's original, 16.6 from the amended budget right now. The expenditure budget is exactly the same, $250 million, also the same increases, with 85% of that being payroll, 6% of it being professional and contracted services, supplies and materials being 4.7%, and then other operating costs at 3.1%. By function, you'll see that almost 60% of the funds are spent on instruction, with small percentages going to some of the other places on there. One of our biggest increases we've seen over the last several years has been our maintenance and operations with the cost of insurance, and then our security budget going up as well with the increased SROs. So as I said before, the revenue and expenditures are identical on here now. So that one is a balanced budget. And then we'll move to the food service budget. This one's used for the breakfast and lunch program and managed by our child nutrition department. Their revenue comes from local, as kids have to pay for lunches, and then also from the federal free and reduced lunches. You'll see slight increases on all of this as their participation has increased slightly. Federal makes up 77% of their budget, with local making up about 23%. And this is kind of how it shows you where it historically has been. 2020, 2021, and then 2021, 2022 was whenever the federal government was covering all lunches and breakfasts. That's why you'll see the higher percentage there. Once that ended, it returned back to the normal, about 76 to 78% with federal and the rest being local. Their budget that they're requesting for this year is $18,281 for expenditures, a slight increase over last year, and does include $1.6 million in capital expenses. For their budget, 51% of its supplies, which is mainly the food, and then 36% for payroll. Theirs is a balanced budget. They had a fund balance at 8/31 of $6.9 million. That's about 4.5 months of operating expenditures. They're supposed to be keeping around 3 months, so they are still trying to reduce that if they can. Our debt service fund is used to pay for bonds, principal, interest, and related fees. And for 25-26, the expenditures that we have are $77 million. This is $40.5 million in bond principal, $36.6 million in bond interest, and then some miscellaneous other little fees there. So you're looking at about 52% principal and about 48% interest on that. On revenue, we're recommending a rate of 0.3263 for that. That will raise $60.4 million with the state hold harmless funding because of the $140,000 homestead. That brings that up to $10.4 million of state funding. So a total revenue budget of $71 million. As you can see, that's a little bit of a deficit. We did consult with our investment advisor, and he did say that we're currently at $24 million in fund balance, that we could go as low as $15 million with that. So reducing it by 6 will bring it down to about $18 million. For the total combined property tax rate, we would recommend $1.0289, which is a total increase of 6 cents over last year. Kind of a graph of where it's gone over the years. You can see the big dip right in 2023, right before the bond passed, and then the increases mainly due to the bond over the last couple of years, and then also due to this Vader election this year. Okay, any questions?
Questions on the budget?
So I'm looking at the budget report, the other PDF in the link, and it lists all of the schools in their budget, but it doesn't have early college.
We don't have a budget for them yet because they hadn't started as of the submissions. We do have a set aside for them right now. Right now, I've got about $20,000 in a set aside fund for them that's included inside of the budget. I think with their numbers, we're looking at they only need about 8,000 of that for an allocation.
And then on the supplemental budget requests, there's a funding for welding at BCTEA. Why is that a supplemental and not absorbed in their ongoing budget?
It's a new budget right now, so they're still trying to figure out what all materials they need for that budget, so they're still keeping it as a separate line item right now. They're hoping over the next couple of years to really get a budget locked down on that, to be able to include it within their base budget.
Is any portion of welding within their base budget, or is the $35,000 the entirety?
I think the entire part's outside of their base budget right now.
They have a base, and the 35 is over and above that.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I believe they have that one and culinary arts because food costs have exceeded what they had planned on using.
Yeah, I asked the same thing about, as we do the special requests, how long do they stay? And so what they're hoping for with a newer program is for that to stabilize, and then we find out getting them all the materials they need to continue building that program, and then once we're there, then moving it into their local budget so we know. And that amount would be probably more than they need, but hopefully that they're at that point, that we're sound.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Stephen. At this time, we will have our public meeting to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate for 2025-2026. So I declare this public meeting now open to hear comments concerning the presentation of the budget and proposed tax rate for 2025-2026. Is there anyone here who came to speak to the budget? All right, seeing nobody, if there's no further discussion, I will now close this public meeting. We're ready for our regular meeting board agenda items. 8.01, financial statements for the month of June 2025. Mr. Williams?
Okay. These are, as you just stated, the financial statements for the month ended June 30th, 2025. We will start with general fund. We have a fund balance of $204,928,702. That represents revenues over expenditures in the amount of $26,625,418. Investment interest revenue for the year, as of this reporting period, we are up to $6.8 million on this fund. Total expenditures as of 6/30, we're at 75.59%, so below our 83% monitoring threshold. So the general fund is right on track. We're good with that fund. General fund expenditure matrix. We have payroll running as of the end of June at $154,300,630, which was 86.5% of the budget. Utilities were at $4,137,128, or 2.3% of the budget. Instructional supplies of $2,501,613, we're at 1.4% of the budget. And then other expenditures of $3,143,183, we're at 1.8% of the budget. Child Nutrition Fund had a fund balance of $9,143,382. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $2,224,755. The department continues to operate well. Went over there this morning and greeted those ladies on their first day back, and I've never seen such a big group of people so happy to be back to work. It was a good time. Mary Alice doing a great job. Expenditures as of June 30th, we're at 72.21%. Again, that's tracking well within our what we use to measure where we are with our budget. So CNS is doing quite well. We're quite optimistic that they will continue to do so. Debt service fund, we're at $66,338,369. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $42,089,663. We just, matter of fact, I got confirmation today. We made our August 15th payment, which is our final debt service payment for the year in the amount of $43,104,400. So the total debt service paid for the year is $62,033,800. And investment revenue for this fund, we make some investments off of this fund too, $1.79 million. The tuition-based pre-K fund balance of $458.20. Revenues over expenditures in the amount of $117,870. They'd received 96.72% of their budgeted revenue for the year. Total expenditures as of 6/30 were at 84.01, so that fund, again, is right where it should be for the year. So you really won't have any more expenditures for the rest of this fiscal year. Start again next year. Special revenue funds, as of 6/30, they were at 48.92%, which, as I say every month, seems awfully low, but it's because we have multiple funds in here and they roll over from year to year. And then we also tend to see a lag in this fund due to TEA reimbursements, because we spend the money first and then get reimbursed for it. But all the programs are tracking as expected. Campus Activity Fund balance was $3,635,437. That represents revenues over expenditures of $273,008. That revenues were at $2.6 million, while their expenditures were at $2.3 million. So bringing in a little bit more than what they spent. But that fund, again, is performing as expected. 2024 bond, we are at $548,239,292. That represents expenditures over revenues in the amount of $24,663,052. Because until we sell some more bonds, we will have no revenue for this fund other than investment interest, which, by the way, was sitting at $15.9 million through June. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, all total, we have made about $30 million in interest revenue in bond funds. So we did sell the first set of bonds, $600 million, in February, and received the funds in March. The next bonds will be issued mid-2026, just kind of depending on how our expenditures go. When we get to the point we need to bring in some more money, we will issue those funds and keep on going. Locally defined capital projects fund, we were at $26,121,292. That represents expenditures over revenues in the amount of $2,107,500. And as I say every month, those are for ongoing things the board has agreed to pay for out of this fund: buses, Pennington Field lights, band instruments, box trucks, which I saw some of the box trucks this morning. Nice looking trucks. And then any future needs that may need to come out of this fund, we will bring it to the board for approval as needed. And that should be it. Any questions?
All right, any questions on the financial statements?
What's the next one?
All right, so 8.02, extension of RFP 23-18B for event planning services. Mr. Kerbo?
Good evening. couple of years ago for event planning, we didn't quite hit the threshold that required a bid, but we were close to it. So we issued a bid in 2023, and as we expected, it hit a little over 50,000. So that was a good thing that we put that in there. And since then, the needs have increased, and now that we have those services available, other departments and campuses have taken advantage of that. So this is just a routine extension of this to continue using these services.
All right, any questions on the RFP? 8.003, extension of RFP 24-14, general retail merchandise, grocery supplies, equipment, and services.
And this is a similar RFP for purchase from local vendors for, anywhere from food supplies needed for events and snacks and so forth. And we utilize this quite a bit.
All right, any questions on RFP 24-14? All right, extension of RFP 24-18 for printing services.
And another one of those as needed agreements with local printers that we use for printing business cards, stationery, envelopes, things like that. And so this is just an extension, take advantage of another year.
All right, any questions on RFP 24-18? Okay, 8.05, extension of property and casualty insurance award.
Okay. This is actually a new purchase because we've not, our previous property and casualty insurance expired or is expiring this year. So this is actually a new bid, and we solicited qualification statements for brokers to go out and shop for property and casualty insurance. And through that process, Rochard, Smith, and Barton became our broker of record, and they shopped insurance for us. And we're taking advantage of a favorable insurance market. As you can see from the information in the agenda item and in the Friday update that we've experienced a significant amount of decrease, which is welcome in these day and age. I will say that this will need to be corrected because there was an item on here that was not included in the agenda item, and it's a cost of $23,500 for equipment breakdown. That got overlooked as we were preparing this, so we will correct that to add that to that. So while the overall savings is just over $352,000, there'll be a slight adjustment to that. So, but it is a significant savings from the previous year.
All right, that sounds like good news. Any questions on the extension of the property and casualty insurance? RFP 25-11 for security cameras, video management, and network recording.
Okay. As the information in the agenda item indicates, this was a three-phased approach to increase our awareness of and security monitoring capabilities and recording. So phase one was to add structured cabling to that, and we've done that. Our phase one was actually to increase or to update our monitoring system. Once that was done, then phase two was to increase the structured cabling and add that to it where needed to those cameras that are going to be placed. This is phase three, is to add 337 additional cameras to our existing 889 cameras.
All right, any questions on the cameras and video management? All right, 8.07, application for expedited state waiver. Is anyone speaking to this?
I am here to speak if there's a question. This is just our staff development waiver. We have 3 waivers we go for every year. 2 are 3-year, on a 3-year cycle. The staff development is you have to apply every year. So we're in the middle of that 3-year cycle on our other waivers, but we go out for the staff development waiver every year.
Okay. Any questions? All right, 8.08, renewal of VMware software. Dr. Hopkins.
Hello. This is our renewal of VM software, which is our virtual servers for part of our data center. Are there any questions about this renewal?
The only question I have is with the acquisition of VMware by another organization, the costs have gone up considerably the last 2 years. Are we expecting those increases to continue, or do we think it's plateaued?
While we understand that there are increases just with any time a new company is acquired, I am unable to predict whether they have kind of stabilized. It is our hope that they have stabilized just with their new pricing structure and acquisition, but we'll see what next year brings. We definitely are keeping our eye on this product, and we are keenly aware of where the pricing is and how it impacts our programs.
And one of the things we talked about was, you know, at this price point, is this our product still? And the answer was a definitive yes. But that we'll continue to watch, because if the price point changes, then that may change our opinion. But right now, with the people we've trained to use the system, where we're at, we're good, but it's not something that we will not pay attention to if we continue to see increases.
Yeah, I mean, when you read about it, that this is kind of the only choice that you have to get the software, and the price keeps going up. It does sound a lot like gouging. So, but, you know, that's the truth about business, is anytime someone starts taking bigger margins than they should, there's going to be competition, and they're going to lose it pretty quick. So, you know, one way or another, it needs to come back down. So. All right, any other questions on the VMware software? All right, 8.09, international student travel.
Good evening. This is a trip for LD Bell, going to the Dominican Republic with AP and IB students in June. Do you have any questions?
Are there any concerns? I mean, I know that they're under a heightened travel watch.
We will continue to watch that. None at this time, but it is a long time away from the trip.
And then, you know, one of the things we've done over the we've moved a lot of our trips to EF Tours because they protect us and protect the kids and protect the trip. If conditions change, they will change that trip, and they will contact us, and they will make say, hey, we can take you to Costa Rica, we can do this, but we're not going to go there. So that's why, and especially it was after COVID, we tried to move almost all of our trips to EF Tours.
All right, any other questions on the student travel? Okay, 8.10, Tarrant County Commissioners Court MOU.
This is an MOU with HEB and Tarrant County Commissioners Court, along with Tarrant County Dispute Resolution, to allow our families to have another option before referring them to truancy court. This will cost the district no cost. They will provide $30,000 for us to be able to send our students to meet with a mediator on our campuses to provide options and help and support before we're having to send students and their families to truancy court. Any questions?
All right, any questions on this MOU? All right, thank you, Katina.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready to start our action items. 9.01, consider approval of donations for the August regular board meeting, presentation of certificates of appreciation. Did anyone have any questions on any of these donations? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the August 2025 donations as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the August 2025 donations as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. 9.02, consider approval of update to the 2025-2026 staffing table.
Before I reference the 2 units we're asking you to consider tonight, I wanted to let you know that when Jacqueline Himmel and I were preparing the staffing table for this board meeting, we discovered that in our May staffing table, we had a formula issue, and so there was a 10 unit discrepancy in that report. And so while that doesn't impact anything about your approval, since you're approving the new units, we just wanted to let you know that we've corrected that and that was a discrepancy. So if there was a comparison between today's report and the May report, you would see that 10 count difference.
Was it
But
up or
they-
down, Cicely?
Do what?
Up or down?
Up. It was a 36 instead of a 26, so up. We also wanted to let you know that we're asking for 2 units, and they're both related to the Collegiate Academy of HEB ISD. So it's our child nutrition services, and those will be funded through our child nutrition services, and it would be a specialist and an assistant manager. Let me make sure I may be saying that wrong. Yes, that's correct. Any questions?
All right, any questions on the staffing table additions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the updates to the 2025-2026 staffing table as submitted.
I have a motion and second for the board to approve the new units in the staffing table as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. 9.03, consider approval of submitted contracts, MOUs, agreements related to HB 3372.
So you received 2 agreements, both are email agreements, and I want to see if you have any questions before considering approval of these.
Any questions on either of these agreements? I'll accept a motion. That's a long motion.
It's very long.
Who's brave enough? Yeah. Go ahead, Fred.
After reviewing the contracts, MOUs, agreements between the following individual administrators, education businesses that provide curriculum and administration to any school districts, open enrollment charter schools, or regional service centers, I move that the board approve the contracts as submitted because 1, the contracts will not harm the district. 2, the arrangements do not present a conflict of interest. 3, and the services to be performed by the administrator be performed entirely on the administrator's personal time.
I have a motion and a second. I have to read the whole thing again. Review of the contracts, MOU agreement between the following individual administrators and the education businesses that provide curriculum or administration to any school districts, open enrollment charter schools, or regional service centers. The motion moved that the board approve the contracts as submitted because 1, the contracts will not harm the district. 2, the arrangements do not present a conflict of interest. And 3, the services to be performed by the administrators will be performed entirely on the administrator's personal time. Please vote.
Ty and I have already talked about shortening that for the next meeting.
You know. And that motion passes. 9.04, consider approval of student code of conduct. Ms. Rhodes?
Good evening again. I will be presenting the Student Code of Conduct for the 25-26 school year for consideration of approval tonight. We model our Student Code of Conduct from the TASB model, Student Code of Conduct. It is related to aligns with our strategic plan, district priorities, student success, safety, and well-being. The House Bill 6 made some substantial changes to Chapter 37 requirements, as you can see with this summary, along with other House and Senate bills, which we will be reviewing. I will take you through an overview in sequential order in the HEB ISD Student Code of Conduct as it appears. Campus behavior coordinators. House Bill 6 eliminates exemption from all Chapter 37 provisions of District of Innovation plans. So all schools are required to have a single designated person, campus behavior coordinator, on each campus. This is located in the Student Code of Conduct on page 2, listed under campus behavior coordinator. Student identification requirements. All secondary students must wear their school-issued ID badge. It must be worn at waist level and remain visible throughout the day, unobstructed at all times. This is in alignment and recommendations from our HEB ISD safety team and our student safety task force. This is located on page 5. Senate Bill 326, anti-Semitism, requires a district to use the definition of anti-Semitism, including the examples referenced, when determining whether behavior that violates the Code of Conduct was motivated by anti-Semitism. It is located on page 6, but the definitions and examples are located in the glossary on page 32. On page 7, Senate Bill 1569 removes short barrel firearms from the definition prohibited weapons in the Penal Code. So now those firearms are now located specifically as prohibited weapons here. It is listed under possession of prohibited items, bullet 5 and bullet 8. House Bill 1481, which I know we're all aware of, possession of personal communication devices. This bill prohibits the use of personal communication devices while on school property during the school day and indicates that districts must establish disciplinary measures to be imposed for violations. So you will see on page 7, listed under possession of personal communication devices, it lists the bill. It also talks about what's considered a personal communication device and where it should be stored during the school day. It also lists the exemptions that are possible. And on page 8, it lists the violations and consequences for use. First-time offenses of possession. House Bill 6 removes the mandatory requirement that students who possess or uses e-cigarettes be removed to DAP placement. If a student is not placed in DAP for possession or use of an e-cigarette for the first-time offense, the student must be placed in ISS for at least 10 days. The sale or delivery of an e-cigarette and/or THC vapes remain a mandatory placement in DAP. Parental involvement. House Bill 6 allows districts to adopt a policy giving parents the right to request a behavior agreement after a student is placed in DAP or expelled. At this time, we're recommending that we do not adopt a parent involvement policy to allow our internal student safety task force to provide input on that policy. Removal from the regular education setting. House Bill 6 changes the standards from formal teacher removals with Chapter 37 and clarifies that teacher removals can result from a single incident of student behavior. Teachers, it also states that teachers should have the opportunity to participate in conferences. Returning students to the classroom, added language that it needs written consent from the teacher. And then it added appeals of formal teacher removals, allows a district to choose whether or not they have a process for students to appeal, and policy language will be included in Update 126. ISS and OSS revisions. House Bill 6 6 provides that there is no limit on the number of days a student may be assigned to ISS. However, schools must review each student's ISS status at least every 10 school days to assess progress and determine whether continued placement is appropriate. And documentation of the review and decisions are required. Out-of-school suspension is limited to 3 days maximum and restricted for students below grade 3. Alternative assignments for OSS. House Bill 6 allows parents or guardians may submit a written request to the principal to reassign a student placed in out-of-school suspension. The parent must provide information and documentation that they are unable to provide suitable supervision for the student during the hours and the period of the suspension. This is under the sole discretion of the principal to reassign the student placement in OSS. And last, this slide was added because it was on your summary, and it was the only bullet that didn't have a slide. House Bill 6 allows for a virtual expulsion program, which this would only be by case in a rare circumstance. Any questions?
Any questions on the code of conduct?
Joe, what's an example of a rare circumstance for the last case?
It could be a safety circumstance.
All right, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the student code of conduct as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the student code of conduct as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you. 9.05, consider approval of resolution approving 2024-2025 application of GASB 54.
Okay, this is a resolution we bring to the board each year. It's kind of just an ongoing business matter. This is the document that allows us to, how we manage our fund balance, where we can place it into the different categories: non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, unassigned. And this resolution allows that to happen.
All right. Are there any questions on this resolution? I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve resolution approving the 2024-2025 application of GASB 54 standards as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approve the resolution approving the 2024-2025 application of GASB 54 standards as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. 9.06, consider approval of adoption of 2025-2026 budget.
Okay, you heard the budget presentation from Stephen. Now the next step in that process is to ask the board to approve the budgets for the general fund, food service fund, debt service fund, as is required by law and as presented.
Any further questions on the budget before we vote on it? I'll accept the motion.
I move the board approve the 2025-2026 revenue and expenditure budgets for the general fund, the food service fund, and the debt service fund as required by law and as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the 2025-2026 revenue and expenditure budgets for the general fund, the food service fund, and the debt service fund as required by law as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. 9.07, consider approval to set the 2025-2026 tax rate. Ordinance number 161.
Yes, sir. Now that the budget's approved, we are asking the board to approve a tax rate to support those budgets. Would be a tax rate of .7026 for maintenance and operations, .3263 for the debt service fund, for a total tax rate of 1.0289. Also be aware that 70.26 cents does include a 3-cent Vader.
Are there any questions? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.028900, which is effectively a 12.43% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
I have a motion and second for the property tax rate to be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.0289, which is effectively a 12.43% increase in the tax rate. Please vote. And that motion passes. 9.08, consider approval of an order calling a special election on November 4th, 2025.
Okay, now that the board has adopted a tax rate of $1.0289, that is a little less than 3 cents more than our voter approval tax rate as calculated by the Truth in Taxation calculations. Therefore, we will be required to hold an election in November. And part of that process, first part of that process is to adopt a resolution to order that election. So we are asking to order an election for November 4th, 2025 for a voter approval tax rate election.
All right, what questions does the board have?
More of a comment. This is an important vote, not only for our taxpayers, but also for our students, for our community. So I just want to clarify why I will be voting for the voter approval tax rate election this November. It's not a decision I take lightly. As a trustee, I am committed to ensuring our district remains one of the most fiscally responsible in all of Texas. We consistently deliver excellent results for our students while carefully managing taxpayer dollars. When our upcoming financial audit is complete, you're going to see exactly that. You're going to see a strong record of efficiency and accountability that our community has come to expect. Unfortunately, even with this high level of personal responsibility, we find ourselves in this situation for reasons outside of our control. Calling a Vader, honestly, is not my first choice, but it is the appropriate thing in this particular situation, because without it, we cannot maintain the quality of education our community expects and that our students deserve. Even with the increase, our tax rate is still going to be lower than what voters approved in the 2023 bond election, thanks in large part due to our district's diligent financial management. So that is why I'm going to be voting in favor of this tonight.
All right, thank you, Dr. Began. Anyone else?
I'd like to add a comment. Pretty much agree with you completely. John, timing is everything. Dobie, you and your predecessors, you guys do such a great job of finding the right time to diffuse bonds, stair-stepping the buying of bonds. I always appreciate that you always have the taxpayer's interest, and you do things, I don't think that are always seen, that are absolutely in taxpayer interest. We're one of the last districts to consider this. It's not fair. If us not doing this doesn't allow us to be competitive to help our staffing and our teachers. I just think that this is absolutely the right timing to do it. I've voiced in previous discussions why the timing of this particular moment is so special for our district, and I too am in favor of this.
So I just want to point out a couple of things that we all know, but folks that are listening might not recognize. And part of why it's important that we do this is that because we want to maintain and continue to have programs and people that are best for our students. And because the legislature has not appropriated monies beyond what they did in the 89th for teacher pay only, it is imperative for us to keep up with those programs and those people, and do what's right by our kids. So we are going to rely on the community once again to come forward and support this school district, and pass this election.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the order calling for a voter-approved tax rate election for November 4th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the order calling for a voter-approved tax rate election for the November 4, 2025 as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you, board. We're ready for other business. Does any board member have any items they'd like to request be placed on future board agendas? All right, item 10.02, review of board activity chart. I've looked it over. It looks like we're pretty well covered through the rest of this month. We do not need a second special or closed session. We're not. We don't do special sessions. Sorry.
Nobody does. Nobody does right now.
That's a different entity. Half the board would leave. All right. So I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.